The second DLC of Doom Eternal, The Ancient Gods Part 2, dropped on the 18th of March and received a reception which I wouldn't exactly call positive. Many said that the DLC was too easy, too short, and was not as good as Tag 1. I myself really enjoyed Tag 1 and was expecting Tag 2 to continue with the same design philosophy, but that is sadly not the case. And I'm sad to say that what we got is not up to par with Tag 1. That said, Tag 2 is not as bad as some people make it out to be, and I want to discuss all the things I like and dislike about it in this video. So, without further ado, let's get right to it. The first mission of The Ancient Gods Part 2 is called the World Spear, and it picks up from where the previous DLC left off. The Doomslayer revives the Dark Lord and immediately tries to shoot him. When it becomes clear that he cannot hurt the Dark Lord at their current location, the Slayer sets off on his journey to Hell's capital city, Emora, where the Dark Lord will be waiting for him. The first stop on the Slayer's journey to Emora is Argent Denor, where he needs to go to the World Spear, the massive crystal shard piercing the pulse of the planet, and retrieve a power source. This level is visually stunning, with a high fantasy aesthetic and a cold color palette. It's a great looking level, but it doesn't really look like a Doom level, which is something some may not like. At the beginning of this level, you're introduced to the new meat hook platforming, and right after that, you enter an arena, where you are introduced to the first of 5 new enemies, the Screecher. This enemy is just a zombie that glows purple and buffs enemies when killed. The enemies buffed by the Screecher behave like spirited enemies, with increased damage resistance, speed, and immunity to falters, and the Ice Bomb. You can, however, break their weak points. The Screecher is an interesting enemy, and it does make the arenas it is present in more interesting, since it prevents you from just spamming the Precision Bolt rocket combo, grenades, and the Sentinel Hammer. In the next arena, you're introduced to the second new enemy, the Armored Baron. As the name suggests, he's a Baron in a suit of armor, which blocks damage and makes him immune to falters. You can break his armor by doing damage with any weapon, but the most optimal way of dealing with his armor is to just hit his weapon with the Precision Bolt or Ballista when he's charging up an attack. Once his armor is broken, you can fight him like a regular Baron. I like this new enemy. The Armored Baron looks cool and is fun to fight. I just wish he was present in more arenas. In the next arena, you have a section where you have to fight a ton of fodder, some Screechers, and 2 Mancubi, while knee-deep in purple goo. Nobody likes the purple goo. Literally nobody, regardless of their skill level. So, I don't understand why id insists on adding more purple goo sections. Anyway, shortly after the annoying purple goo section, you receive a new weapon, the Sentinel Hammer. This new weapon is really cool and arguably overpowered, since when you hit enemies with it, they drop ammo, get stunned for a very long time, and if they're under the effects of any equipment, those effects are amplified. I like this new weapon, but don't use it much, since Tag 2 is not hard enough to necessitate its use, and sometimes I just forget I even have it. Other new things this level introduces are Stone Imps and Escalation Encounters. Stone Imps are just purple imps which have high resistances to everything but the full auto shotgun, Sentinel Hammer, Unmaker, and Chain Gun Shield. They also have the spinning attack, which is annoying but not much of a threat, unless you're in the middle of a big fight with heavies and you are surrounded by a small army of Stone Imps, which never actually happens in this DLC. My opinion on the Stone Imps is mostly neutral. I don't particularly like them, but I don't dislike them either. The Escalation Encounters are also a bit of a letdown. They are these gore nests which you can activate twice. Beating the first encounter rewards you with a hammer upgrade, and if you choose to activate the gore nest again and beat the second encounter, you will be rewarded with the Slayer skin. When Hugo announced the Escalation Encounters, he said that the first encounter is something which anyone can beat without too much issue, and the second, which unlocks a cosmetic, is supposed to test the more experienced players. This, however, is not the case. Sure, the second encounter is always more difficult than the first, but not by much, and these Escalation Encounters feel like a walk in the park when compared to some of the arenas in DLC 1, or some of the Slayer gates in the base campaign. The World Spear level has some nice platforming sections, which are actually fun. I did not mind the platforming sections in the base campaign of Doom Eternal and DLC 1, but I did not particularly enjoy them either, so it's nice to have some fun platforming sections in DLC 2. I also like how this level encourages using the meat hook to stay in the air by means of combat encounters, which pretty much demand it, the platforming sections, and meat hook points positioned in the middle of some arenas. It's nice to see it pushing less advanced players to engage and experiment with one of the more advanced and fun mechanics of this game. This is everything I found interesting about the first mission, so let's move on to the second, Reclaimed Earth. This is my favorite level of the entire DLC. The Slayer visits this level in order to use the crystal he previously collected on Argent du Nord to activate a gate, which will take him directly in front of the gates of Emora. It's a beautiful level, with well-designed arenas, but as good as these arenas are, they, like the rest of the arenas in this DLC, simply don't have enough enemies in them, so the combat encounters feel a little short and not very challenging. The second arena of this level could be considered somewhat challenging, but most experienced players will have very little issue beating it on their first try. Nevertheless, this arena was a step up from everything I encountered in World Spear, so I thought that the DLC will ramp up the difficulty from there, but that was sadly not the case. This level just got easier from there on, with the exception of the final arena, which was roughly at the same difficulty level as the second one. The new enemies introduced in this level are the Curse Prowler and the Riot Soldier. The Riot Soldier is a reskin of the Shield guy and is a complete joke. He doesn't really do anything, and I don't consider this enemy a threat at all. They should make this enemy more aggressive, not extremely aggressive to the point where he spams you with machine gun fire on sight, but to the point where he can be a serious threat if you're not paying attention. As for the Curse Prowler, it's basically a reskinned Prowler, which can curse you, taking away your ability to dash, slowly draining your health, and the only way to kill it after it has cursed you is to blood punch it. This enemy feels kinda cheap, since it behaves and sounds exactly like a regular Prowler, so it will always catch you off guard. In my opinion, the Curse Prowler should have completely different sound effects from the regular Prowler, and it should be more brightly colored. Now, on to the next level, Emora. This level has one of the most epic introductory cutscenes in the history of video games, there's no doubt about that, but what follows it is disappointing in so many ways. This level has huge arenas which could have had a ton of heavy enemies in them, but no, they have these soldier type enemies which die to literally everything. Like, the Slayer can sneeze in their general direction and they will die. The escalation encounter is underwhelming, and the only somewhat challenging arena is the one with the double Marauders, some Screechers and a Baron, since you can get obliterated if you're not careful and kill a Screecher. This level has no memorable encounters, and on top of that it has some bugs which could end your Ultra Nightmare run. The final arena, before the Dark Lord boss fight, is just a flat arena with a bunch of stone imps and an overdrive power-up. This is the last arena before the final boss of Doom Eternal, and it's just a bunch of stone imps. Anyway, let's discuss the final boss. This was a much anticipated boss fight. I really liked the design of the Dark Lord's armor, and whoever voiced him did an amazing job. The distortion effect applied to his voice when he puts on his helmet is also cool as hell. Just listen to this.
Stand and fight, Slayer. Honor your true God. Fight and show me your purpose.
You can't tell me that's not last boss worthy. The boss fight itself is not very difficult. In fact, if you got to this point on your Ultra Nightmare run, it's practically guaranteed to be successful. But don't get too overconfident, since if he hits you, he heals and he does pack a punch. The Dark Lord is practically a big marauder. Just wait for his eyes to flash green, shoot him to stagger him, and then deal as much damage as you can before he recovers. I actually like this boss fight more than every other boss fight in Doom Eternal, because I'm actually fighting the boss, not just his minions. Boss fights like the one in Tag 1, where for the most part what you're actually fighting is a bunch of spirits, and not the boss himself, don't really feel like boss fights. The Dark Lord fight feels like a proper boss fight. It doesn't really compare to the quality of boss fights in games such as Dark Souls, but I think it's better than all the other boss fights in Doom Eternal. In conclusion, I can say that this DLC was kind of disappointing. We got some cool levels, but they feel a bit too empty and are a little too easy. We got good music to go with these levels, but it's somewhat poorly mixed, and it doesn't really pop over the sounds of gunfire and demonic screams like the music in the base campaign does. And all the new enemies are reskins, which is something I definitely do not like. Now, don't get me wrong, when I say that this DLC is disappointing, all I mean is that it doesn't raise the bar after Tag 1, not that it's actually a bad DLC. If we got these levels in a world where Tag 1 was never released, nobody would complain about these levels being too easy, having short encounters, or arenas that feel empty. So don't go review bomb it just because you feel it's too easy after you played Tag 1 and have 500 hours in the game. The average Doom player that has less than 100 hours in the game will find these levels sufficiently challenging. Trust me. If you made it this far, I hope that you enjoyed my first game review. If you want to see more content like this, leave a like, subscribe, and see you in the next one.